Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our latest webinar. My name is Stefan, and I'm going to welcome you to the Inside the Threat Matrix session. It's our webinar presenting the Threat Matrix report with the latest malware trends and the real-world scenarios coming from our research and incident response teams. This is how the agenda for today is going to look like. We're going to do a quick introduction. I'm going to take you through the threat landscape that we're currently seeing in the cyberspace. I'm going to take you through some malware insights from our research team. And last but not least, I'm going to present you a real-world scenario that our incident response team had encountered in the past few months. Then we're going to end it with some final thoughts. So this being said, a couple of words about CSIS. We're a Copenhagen-based cybersecurity company. We are the proud hosts of the Cyberhagen Cybercrime Conference, and we were recently credited by the Gartner Group for our world-known actionable threat intelligence capabilities, and also for our innovative security products, one of them being the email fraud protection solution that is quite effective against the business email compromise type of attacks. About the Threat Matrix report, this is a must-read publication. We're publishing this report every 6 months. Usually our customers, they get early access to this report. It's packed with facts and stats describing the continuously evolving threat landscape, together with our reflections on the latest trends, real case studies together with lessons learned. So it's, I would say it's definitely the must-read publication if you want to be kept updated with the continuously evolving threat landscape. One way to describe how cybercrime evolves is to look at the numbers, and a couple of relevant numbers from the last 6 months. I think it's they show the fact that cryptocurrency is constantly being used for money laundering and for exiting from cybercrime operations. More than $1.3 billion were stolen in cryptocurrency in the first quarter of 2020. The average ransom paid in the second quarter of 2020 is almost $200,000, which I think shows the continuous evolution of ransomware attacks. And because of the latest developments in the real world, we're seeing an almost 50% increase in work from home related cyber attacks. Diving deeper into the threat matrix, we get to look at the threat landscape, but not necessarily in a way that numbers would describe it, but in a way that images would describe it. And one of the things that we always include in the threat matrix report is a malware timeline that we update every 6 months, which shows, let's say, the most significant malware strains that are appearing every year. And by looking at the way it looks in the past couple of years, we can definitely see that ransomware has been a dominant threat when it comes to the consequences of being infected by it. And also, I think what's important to point out here is that 2020 was the first year in which we had to mark an important event. It's the ones marked in red. And it's the first important event in the, let's say, cybercrime world that actually comes from the real world, which is the fact that the coronavirus pandemic has hit. And of course, cyber criminals were very good at exploiting this. And this is actually one of the main things that I want you to remember at the end of this session, the fact that the real world has changed, the fact that a lot of employees are working from home, the fact that people want to be updated with the latest news on the COVID-19 outbreak means that more doors are being opened to cyber criminals to exploit our computers. Another thing is that ransomware keeps evolving. Nowadays, the new normal is to see hack and extort campaigns in which data is not only encrypted, but it's also exfiltrated with the purpose of later being leaked. So victims of ransomware are publicly shamed, and cyber criminals are trying to place much more pressure on them to pay the ransom. We're seeing the story with Emotet and TrickBot, probably the most dangerous Trojans out there, being continued despite the takedown efforts that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And last but not least, big wave of real-time phishing attacks targeting Europe. Various groups are leveraging this attack method to target the financial institutions. And of course, another thing worth mentioning is that all these threats, they don't only affect Windows users, but we're seeing Mac OS X and mobile devices such as Android devices increasingly being targeted by cybercrime. So, jumping into the insights, we've packed this latest threat matrix report with a lot of statistics because during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were and still are constantly monitoring the evolution of cybercrime campaigns that are related to the pandemic. One of the reasons why this caused a shift in the threat landscape was because RDP, internet exposure, had grown significantly, mostly because of people and organizations moving to a work from home system without necessarily being prepared for that. Having VPN servers overloaded by the huge amount of traffic generated from people trying to join conferences and upload files to network shares from their homes. Of course, cyber criminals were quick to react to the real world news of the coronavirus pandemic, and they obviously started using COVID-themed lures in their malicious campaigns. We've tracked the evolution of these domain names throughout this whole year, and we still do. For the moment, we can see that the peak of the cyber attacks that were COVID-19 themed coincided with the last peak of the pandemic, which was in March. So it's going to be interesting to see how this trend is going to evolve in the next couple of months, looking at how the real world pandemic is evolving. Of course, most of these domain names were registered in the .com space, but it's worth noting here that .co.uk, so domains targeting the UK, are present in the top 10, meaning that there was a specific focus, increased focus, let's say, from cyber criminals toward targeting the United Kingdom. If we check the registrars that, let's say, facilitated the registration of these domain names, we can see that it's the list is packed with popular domain name providers such as GoDaddy, Tucows, or even Google. On the malware front, we can say that Emotet is back right now, and it looks like nothing is stopping them, even though they've been indicted by the US government with a $5 million bounty on their head. New large-scale campaigns continue flowing in, still dropping the known malwares like TrickBot, QBot, or Dridex, and then even dropping things such as ransomware. Emotet evolved right now into having a Wi-Fi spreading capability. It's basically capable of exploiting Wi-Fi networks which are not correctly configured by brute forcing their passwords and then trying to move laterally from one Wi-Fi network to another. An event worth noting that happened during the summer was Emo Crash, which were some takedown attempts from an unknown entity over the Emotet botnet. By replacing some of the payloads with let's say, benign files. Of course, such kind of actions, while they can disrupt a big malware operation such as Emotet, they cannot disrupt it completely. And that's why we've seen Emotet evolving continuously, continuing to use the classic lures with Office updates or Windows updates. But of course, they also jumped on the bandwagon of using the COVID-19 lures to make victims click on the attachments. And last but not least, and this is quite fresh, as they started using politically themed lures, specifically to target the Democratic Party in the United States. Emotet is usually dropping TrickBot, and there's of course a long-standing relationship between Emotet and TrickBot, something that we've been following for a lot of time, and it's something that we're always describing in the threat matrix report. Of course, TrickBot remained the top malware threat for organizations worldwide. This is mainly because of its modular operation. The actors are capable of fine-tuning depending on the target, and it's very easy for them to add new functionality to improve their reconnaissance or lateral movement or even data exfiltration capabilities. The modularity of TrickBot, and I think this is something worth noting here, it's not something that we have included in the report because it happened in the past couple of weeks, but it's worth noticing that the takedown actions that happened in the past few weeks from both the public sector and some private companies in the TrickBot area, they were not necessarily successful. Right now we're seeing the TrickBot infrastructure back up and running, and the campaigns continuing. And this is mainly because of the fact that, well, you can definitely disrupt such a malware operation by taking down some servers. Because of the backup CNC communication mechanism that the TrickBot malware has implemented, fully taking it down, it's quite hard, if I shouldn't maybe say impossible. And this is because of the C2 communication mechanisms that TrickBot is using, for example, in the Bazaar Loader module. These are based on protocols, peer-to-peer kind of protocols that cannot be taken down by using classical ways. So that's why we're seeing TrickBot still being alive and still being a threat. And from our point of view, it looks more like the recent takedown attempts were more of a signal sent to the TrickBot gang that they maybe shouldn't disrupt the elections or should stay away from influencing elections, rather than an actual move to totally disrupt this operation. One interesting part of the TrickBot research that we published in the latest threat matrix report is the story of Shipito, who is a threat actor involved in spreading TrickBot through by sending millions of spam emails. This is a campaign and a threat actor that we have tracked really closely, and we have analyzed the tool used to send the spam campaigns. The tool is called SpamX, and you will be able to find a full analysis in our report if you download it after this webinar. But I think one of the interesting things is to see exactly how they create the templates for sending out the spam emails and being able to bypass spam filters by using essentially synonyms for certain words or expressions that still makes sense if you put them together. So you can see this is a very simple spam template, how it looks like, and all of those let's say keywords such as good day or see, you can see they are using those keywords and replacing them with randomly chosen synonyms. This is essentially how spammers are doing their best to, let's say, randomize the way that their spam emails look like. Another very relevant part of the threat landscape right now is ransomware, and I think that the relentless campaigns that we've seen lately have continued and will continue in 2020 and beyond. And we're seeing strains of ransomware such as Ryuk or Maze and a lot of others that are jumping on the bandwagon of trying to be really innovative in the way that they constrain their victims to actually pay the ransom. First of all, the ransomware attacks that we're seeing nowadays are very well researched, let's say, on the behalf of the threat actor. They usually hit if they know that they can deliver a deadly hit. They do a lot of manual research and a lot of lateral movement by using pen test kind of technologies, tools, such as Cobalt Strike, for example. And once they make sure that they have access to everything, including the Active Directory and the backups, only then they will hit. So this is how we've came to this new reality in which ransomware threat actors are trying to innovate with finding ways to constrain the victims to pay for the ransom. In some cases, they might launch DDoS attacks at the same time with a ransomware attack, essentially making the targeted organization unable to conduct business. And in other cases, and this is becoming the new norm, we're talking here about hack and extort operations in which the data being targeted is not only encrypted, but before it is encrypted, it is usually exfiltrated. And then the victims of the ransomware attack are publicly shamed, and they are threatened of with making the data public. And of course, in many of these cases, the data relates to their core business. It might relate to their employees, to their partners, to their business secrets. And of course, having such data become public on the internet is not something that a targeted organization would be very happy about. On this slide, you can see a screenshot of how the leak site for the Maze group looked like earlier this year. It's basically every ransomware group right now has one of these leak websites. These are websites in which they post teasers about the leaks. They usually post the summary of the contents of each leak, and they try to give hints about what other things might get leaked in the future in case the ransom is not paid. So it's a classic extortion that's brought up to the enterprise environment by these ransomware groups. And unfortunately, in many cases, for the companies that are being targeted, it's a choice between maybe bankruptcy or big problems, or paying the actual ransom. And that's why these ransomwares are very successful. It's worth noting that throughout this last year, we've been tracking the evolution of these hack and leak ransom operations, and you can see here a quick chart showing the stats of which ransomware variant basically is leaking more data. And you can see that right now Maze, REvil, and the DoppelPaymer are, let's say, the top 3 culprits in publishing leaked data coming from the customers. But this whole new strategy seems to be very effective. In the past, many of the victims were able to avoid paying the ransom by just restoring the data from the backup, and they wouldn't have to worry about having this data leaked. And right now, having this new threat being delivered at the same time with the classic ransomware threat is essentially making these attacks much more profitable for the cyber criminals. Moving forward, there's of course phishing is a very important part of what we do in CSIS, and we're always monitoring the phishing hosts and the top targeted brands as part of our anti-phishing operations. There's not that many changes here. It's usually the same culprits in terms of where phishing websites are hosted. But you can see here having hosting providers such as Amazon or Cloudflare and even Google being responsible for hosting these phishing websites, it's definitely making it harder for many sysadmins to block access to these phishing websites, as usually these are IP ranges which are whitelisted in many security products. At the same time, if you look at the phished brands, so to say, this is the first time where we have a brand that is not actually a brand, part of the top 10. On the 10th place, we have COVID-19, and of course, this shows the huge spike in email viewers used by cyber criminals profiting from the real world pandemic. So speaking of real world, I think maybe the most interesting part of the threat matrix report that we publish every 6 months is the part where we describe the real world scenarios that our teams of researchers, consultants, and incident responders had encountered during the last 6 months. In this case, we have 2 real world scenarios. I'm only going to take you through one of them. For the other, you're going to have to subscribe and download our report after this webinar. The case that I want to talk about a little bit is a case of real-time phishing that happened over the summer. It was not your, let's say, average phishing kind of attack. It was a very advanced real-time phishing attack. And just to make sure that we define real-time phishing attacks, these are basically attacks that are using the stolen data in real time. These are phishing websites that are connected in real time to the targeted bank, for example, and they will not save the user credentials or the user session to be later used, but they would in real time give the fraudster, the cyber criminal, access to the victim's banking account, for example. What's important to note here is that real-time phishing right now is made much more easier than it was, let's say, 1 year ago. This is mainly because of the fact that there's various tools which are popping up in the open source community. And these are tools that are essentially frameworks for easily launching real-time phishing attacks. One of these tools is called Modlishka. Another tool is called RealPhish. This one is actually interesting. It was released by FireEye as a tool for penetration testers, for red teams. But of course, any kind of open source tool, whether it is meant for good or for bad, it will definitely be used sooner or later for bad purposes. But the main idea is that these real-time phishing frameworks essentially work as a man-in-the-middle proxy between the victim and the targeted website, which is in many cases a bank's website, especially when we're talking about financial fraud. And in the case that we are describing, it was a real-time phishing campaign using a custom phish kit, so it wasn't one of these open source ones that I was talking about. The initial delivery vector was search engine ads, so essentially malicious ads placed on search engines such as Google or Bing that would target online banking users when they would search online for their favorite bank's online banking platform. The victim would click on these ads and get redirected to a compromised website that was used just to host the redirects for the malicious search engine ad campaign. And then they would get on the final page, which was the actual phishing page, the real-time phish kit, which was always highly targeted, tailor-made, and that had a couple of anti-analysis techniques being present there, such as checking for the referrer link or checking for the geographical location of where the visitor is coming from. We basically understood that this is a highly experienced threat actor. And because of CERC, because of our CSIS incident response toolkit, this is essentially a piece of software that helps us quickly analyze the victim machines. It helps us to do very quick forensic investigations in malware cases and phishing cases. And it's a very good tool to help secure the relevant evidence in case of such incidents. And basically by running CERC on more than just one victim machine, by having access to the data coming from various incidents, we were able to use those IOCs to essentially correlate multiple cases that hit multiple customers of ours and realize that it's the same threat actor and the same campaign that is hitting all over the place at the same time. That's what helped us reveal the attack timeline. And I'm just going to summarize here a couple of lessons learned, but you're going to have to read the full report for the whole story of this case. But essentially, we realized we're dealing with a very advanced real-time phishing threat actor who is capable of managing multiple campaigns at the same time. And remember, this is not just about managing websites, but it's also about managing cash out, right? Physical people who need to open up fake companies, open up bank accounts, and move money quickly in order to launder the money. It's definitely a disruptive attack vector to be able to use malicious ads placed on search engines because some people, they were some online banking users, they are pretty aware of phishing attacks coming via email. So they would be very careful on what links they would click. But when they search Google for their favorite bank, they don't really expect that the first result in the Google search results page would be a link to a phishing site. And because these attacks don't really have very high volume because they're very, let's say, precisely targeted, it's very unlikely that they will raise a lot of alarms in the research community, and victims would pour in for the attacker without the attacker generating too much noise, so to say. So we're dealing with an attack that has flawless execution, that has anti-analysis techniques, and essentially what this showed us is that real-time phishing is becoming an actual problem. We're seeing both advanced and, let's say, medium advanced groups leveraging real-time phishing frameworks in order to target financial institutions and enterprise networks. We're seeing an increased danger for users who are used with searching for their websites on search engines. So we need to create awareness in this area. This is mainly happening because of these open source phish kits, which are lowering the entry bar for attackers. But of course, highly customizable kits, which are tailor-made, will always be used in targeted attacks. In dealing with the story, CERC, our incident response kit, has been proven to be essential because it allowed us to correlate cases from various customers and essentially offer a solution that that mitigated the problem. So, as we like to say, real-time problems require real-time solutions. And in the case of these phishing campaigns, we were able to provide some real-time data that helped stop quite a lot of fraudulent transactions. So, it's a couple of final thoughts that I would like to share before the end of the session. If we look at the statistics, the numbers, let's say, behind the story, what we noticed in the last 6 months was that the levels of financial malware, let's say, dropped significantly because we're seeing a lot of real-time phishing attacks that are very relevant to our financial customers. Of course, GOSI was one of the malwares that was still dominant in this last half a year. And it's something that we're expecting to see more in the future, together with the known culprits such as Emotet or Dridex. If we look at the info stealers, let's say the less advanced Trojans used in financial crime, we see Pony, Lokibot, and Azeroth as top three infections, followed by Predator the Thief and Agent Tesla. So these are just couple of insights that I wanted to share with you, relevant to financial threats, but not only, especially when talking about ransomware. I think it's something that should concern every organization out there. And I'd like to encourage you to follow CSIS on social media channels. We're pretty active on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and all that stuff. And I'd like to let you know that something that we started doing recently is we're starting making all of our threat matrix reports public. So there's a page on our website where you can download the past threat matrix reports to get an idea of how the threat landscape evolved. And also, I'd like to give you a heads up that after we finish this session, you will be redirected to the CSIS Engagement Hub, where I think this latest report is going to be available for you to download a little bit later today. This being said, I'd like to thank you so much for paying attention and for joining in such high numbers. And let me just check if there's any questions. There's a Q&A section in the platform that we're using where you can drop your questions. Gonna take a question from Anne asking about the cryptocurrency stolen. Where is it stolen from? This is there's a couple of references at the end of the threat matrix report. If you download them, and you're gonna be able to see exactly where that data comes from. There is another question. Will the real-time phishing work in Denmark when people are using NemID? Quick answer is yes. Real-time phishing is the let's say most advanced type of phishing that we're currently seeing, and it's let's say almost impossible for the targeted platform to protect itself. As long as the user goes to one of these pages, and if the attack is advanced enough, then the page will act as a perfect man-in-the-middle proxy between the victim and the targeted platform. And last question from Yaroslav. Will you share the slide deck? And yes, I believe these slides will be shared. You'll be able to access them. I'm not sure if through the platform, but for sure we're going to upload this webinar to YouTube. So there's going to be a public link on the CSIS YouTube channel where you will be able to see and share this webinar with your friends and colleagues. So this being said, I'd like to thank you so much for paying attention, and wish everyone a great day ahead. All the best.